Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel once again. My name is Mariana, and on today's video I'll be sharing with you guys how to get your first apartment in the United States. So this is for the girlies who have stayed after au pairing or who plan to stay. So in this video, I'll be sharing with you guys how you can get your first apartment, and if you can't, what you can do in the meantime in order to be able to find yourself a really good apartment. So first of all, I don't have a script for this video, so it's just gonna be me going from one. I'm just gonna be grasping here and there. So first of all, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like, comment if you have any questions at the end of the video, share with your friends who might be needing an apartment or who might be looking into getting an apartment in the future. So first of all, when you are trying to get an apartment, you have to have a good credit score. So most properties in Connecticut will look at a credit score of about 650 going up. So let's start there. If your credit score is less than 650, they won't even show you any apartment. Like, they won't take you to see some of the apartments that they have because you don't qualify. But I do have a video where you can look at ways to quickly increase your credit score. If you are already doing that, good job. If you haven't started, it's not too late to start. So I will be linking the video in the description box, and at the end there will be a box here with the video. So let's say you do have a good credit score. So first of all, where to look for an apartment? Personally, I went on Facebook Marketplace to look for an apartment. I searched for 1-bedroom apartments near me, and so I searched for 1-bedroom apartments near me, and everything popped up on Facebook Marketplace. And then I was going in and looking to see if everything that I needed in an apartment was there. So what you want to do first when you're looking at trying to get an apartment, you need to create a list of things that you need your apartment to have. So for example, I needed my apartment to have a dryer and a washer, either in the apartment or in the building. I needed my apartment to have a good bathroom and shower. I needed it to have to not be old, because you know those other apartments where they haven't renovated since the 1960s and then they make you pay so much money. I didn't want that. So I had a list of things that I wanted. I wanted it to be closer to the train station because at the time I got it, I didn't have a car. And so first of all, make your list of things that you need your apartment to have. Bear in mind that the more stuff you add on that list, the more expensive your rent is gonna be. So first of all, have that list. Second of all, bear in mind that you are going to be required to at least earn 3 times what your rent is gonna be. So if you already know how much you'll be earning, you need to create a budget and say, okay, I'm willing to pay this much for my rent. So when you do get a chance to look at apartments, you will look at apartments that are within your budget. That way you don't waste a lot of time going back and forth. So you already know what your budget is. So for example, a good rule to have. So one thing that I will say is, if you are getting like a new apartment and it's your first apartment, you need to also consider having roommates. It could be one, it could be more. I do have a roommate, and initially I didn't want to have a roommate, but I thought about how much money I would have to pay if I didn't have a roommate. So consider that also. to decrease the amount of money that you have to pay. So obviously if you're looking at a roommate, you're looking at a 2-bedroom apartment. So write that down. If there's gonna be a roommate, or if there's somebody that you know and trust, you can look together. And then so you've made your list of things that you need. You already know how much. So how much to pay for rent, you basically calculate how much you earn a month, and you put your budget, you put all things that you need to pay, and then you see how much you have left, and then you work out how much you need to save, how much you need to live, you know, enjoy your life, shopping, food, all of those things. And then from there you can get an idea as to how much rent you can afford, and you go off of that. So one thing, like I said, having somebody to share the apartment with will be your best bet if it's your first apartment and you're not moving in with a boyfriend or a family member or something like that. Most of you guys don't have family members in America, so it's best to get somebody like another South African to share the apartment with. So you figured out all of that. So you go on Facebook, you search Facebook Marketplace, that is, you search apartments near me, or apartments in the area that you want to live in. So let's say you want to live in New York City, you just say apartments in New York City. But I'm very sure that when it comes to your first apartment, New York City is going to be a no-go area, because apartments there are very expensive. So you have to also look at like how far it's going to be to travel to work and stuff like that. You have to bear that in mind. And you go to Facebook Marketplace. So a lot of property management companies is going to pop up. So when that happens, you can message all of them. If the apartment that they're advertising is in line with what you're looking for, you can message them on the platform. But some of the things that I want to warn you about is, as much as you will find reputable companies there, like I did, there's people out there getting scammed. So one of the popular scams that you will have is where they tell you that you have to pay money, application fee, before you even look at apartments. Do not let them do this to you. Don't pay anything. They'll be like, oh, you need to pay $100. Application fees are usually anything between $25 to $50 or $40, depending on how big of a company, you know, the management company is. So for example, it's $25 for a criminal background check, and then the other amount is for like admin stuff or whatever. But you only pay this amount once you've actually looked at apartments. So in order to look for apartments, you have to have a good credit score. And sometimes they'll take your word for it and be like, okay, you have more than 650 of a credit score, so we can show you apartments. But if they can't take your word for it, some of them will ask to pull your credit. I do not recommend this, because once they pull your credit, it's going to impact your score. Your score is going to go down because they do a very hard pull, and so this affects your score. So the best thing to do is just to check on Credit Karma and tell them that this is what my score is, or send them a screenshot to prove it, and then let them show you apartments. So let's say you go and view 5 apartments and you like one of them. That's when you then put through an application to be able to get qualified for that apartment. Once you do get that application, some of the documents that they're gonna require from you is your social security, your passport or license, state license. If you don't have a state license, you can use your passport or your state ID. If you don't have a state ID, your passport is just fine. If your passport is expired, you're in a bit of a pickle. But in states like Connecticut, there's actually 16 states where you can get a license regardless of your immigration status. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, so there are 16 states where you can get your license regardless of your immigration status. So if you're in Connecticut, you're in New York, you're in California, this is like some of the states, you can get yourself a license, which you can then use. Well, technically they say you can't use it as a form of ID, but because the real ID rule hasn't come to pass yet, a lot of people still use it as a form of ID. I used it to travel to Hawaii. So it works. So the license is like a drive only license. So, you know, bear in mind, you can't use it for federal identification, blah, 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 but people still use that. So you can still use it as a form of ID. All right. And so they ask you for your ID, which can either be your passport, your license, state ID, and then your social security. And then they're gonna ask you for your pay stub. Now this is where it gets interesting. So if you are a nanny or you are a 1099 employee, what you can do is you can provide them with bank statements showing your savings and showing money that's been coming in for the last 3 months. If you don't have money that's been coming in for the last 3 months, you can just always show them savings. So if you have savings enough for like 3 months rent, that is enough to kind of convince them that, okay, you can take care of yourself. And then if you're a W-2, then you have to provide them with pay stub, 3 months pay stub, or 1 month. If you get paid weekly, you have to provide them with like week to week, so 4 weeks, so a month of pay stub. So what they look for is the year to date money you've made, so then they can check if in a year you make good money. So if you're just starting out, I would suggest that you submit your bank statement showing money that's in the bank or in savings or whatever case may be. So let's recap. It's your ID, which could be passport, blah, blah, blah. It's your social security, it's your bank statement or your pay stub. Let me see, what else do they need? I think that's all they need. And your references, they're gonna ask for references for if you've lived somewhere else where you were on a lease. So they're gonna want that. But if you haven't, you can just simply say, I used to live with my family and I'm deciding to move out, which technically is not a lie, because most of the girls are coming out of like host family, so they did live with a family. And then you could just provide a reference. But I mean, technically if you live with a family, they're not gonna say anything back because you weren't paying rent, because that reference is basically to see if you were a good tenant or not. So another reference they're gonna ask for is for your job. So if you work for a company or if you work for an individual, they're gonna want that person's number and they're gonna give that person a call to see if you really do work there. Like, so what happens is, if you're still new, then this is what they will do. Like, they will go out of their way to find out information about you, because this is your first apartment. So they want to know that they're renting it out to somebody who is trustworthy. Okay, so sometimes they might not call your employer, sometimes they will. So if you don't have an employer yet, I'm going to share with you guys what you can do if getting yourself an apartment for the first time is not the best option. Because if we're being honest, if we're being really, really honest, I do not recommend that you get your own apartment starting out, because you are probably gonna have a really hard time, especially if you can't find yourself somebody to share it with. But if you can and you get lucky to find somebody to share with from the start, then good. But if you can't find anybody, then it's going to be a very hard life for you. So you submit all these documents that they need. They run your background check, they pull your credit, and then they're gonna call you to interview you and ask you a couple of questions. One of the people that actually calls you are people who the people who are responsible for approving they have like their own department within the company, the management company. So they'll call you and they ask you a couple of questions regarding your application. They'll ask some of the questions they asked on the application just to see if you'll give the same answers. My application, when the guy called me, believe you me, he said to me, based on your record, I would deny you, but because you're South African, I'm going to accept your application because South Africans are very trustworthy. So thank you to thank you to whoever, like the South African who had an encounter with him and left a good impression, because that really helped me, because otherwise I didn't have like any references. Like, it was my first apartment, so it was like I still didn't have all this information. I was like very new to all of this. So he was like, I've met South Africans, they're very trustworthy people, they're hardworking, they're not like sketchy. So I was like, really? And he's like, so I will apply, like I will approve your application. So I was like very grateful, guys. And that's how I got my apartment, which was in 2022. I will actually be doing, it's a very small studio apartment, but I will be doing a apartment tour soon, so you guys can get an idea of the type of apartments you can get and for how much in which areas. I won't share with you guys where I live, like in terms of like the town, because I don't want like stalkers, but I will share with you guys how much I pay rent when I do my apartment tour, so you guys can get an idea of how much you will be paying if you do get, you know, the apartment. So when they ask you the questions and stuff, so that's how I got my stuff. And then once I did that, they did ask for the deposit to hold the apartment until the move-in date. So you pay for the deposit, one. So when you get your apartment, you have to pay depending on where you're applying. So where I applied, I had to pay a deposit ×2 and rent. So let's say your rent is $2,000. This is an example. That's not how much I pay. So you would have to pay $6,000. So it will be 2,000 ×2 for deposit, which is like a double deposit. It's 4,000 plus the first month's rent is 2,000. So initially you would have to pay that amount. So when you go into this, you have to at least have 3 times the rent, so that you would have enough money to pay for that when you get approved. I keep looking at that and I need to look at the screen. But yeah, so I paid for the deposit to hold the apartment so they don't give it to anybody else, because I got approved like in the middle of June and I moved in on the 1st of July 2022. So I paid that, and then on the day that I moved in, I paid the rest with my roommate. So we paid the rent and the remaining balance for the deposit, and then we were given our keys, we signed the lease and everything. They explained to us the process in terms of like when we move out, what we need to do. You can go over the lease if you want, but it's a very thick contract, and it's not written in layman's term. So like it's very hard for a normal person to understand the wording, like the words that they use in the contract. So you can always like go on TikTok, the web, like internet, to try to see what is what in the contract. But I just signed the damn thing. I just signed it with the hopes that everything goes well. So if anything in the apartment doesn't seem right when you move in, we were promised a new stove when we moved in, because the one that was in there was very bad. We called them, they brought a new stove. Like every time the heat wasn't working, we would call them, they'll send somebody in. If your property management company doesn't respond to your requests or your complaints regarding the apartments, you can report them. So if you do get an apartment, don't be scared when they don't do anything. You're like, oh my God, I'm so scared to report them, whatever. You can report them in your city, and they'll get their acts together. So one thing that is not included in the rent is your utilities. So your utilities would include your, it depends on apartments. So with my apartment, I had to be responsible for gas, which you use for your hot water and for the heat in the apartment. And then I was responsible for the electricity, which we don't really use much of it, because the only things that are plugged into that is our TV, our refrigerator, and the lights, and our fans that we bought. Like, we bought fans and stuff because they didn't have like AC in the apartment. So we just went to Walmart and we got ourselves some like ACs, which were like this big, and they cost like $150. So we just got those. And so the utilities is the gas, electricity, and the internet. So if you need Wi-Fi, so when we moved in, we didn't know that for regular Wi-Fi we need the cable. So there's like a weird thing that you plug in your internet, but that apartment building didn't have it. So I had to get a wireless home router. So we got like wireless internet from Verizon. T-Mobile also has, I pay $60 a month for that. My utilities are usually, for gas is usually around 130, 123, 130. And then for electricity, it's usually less than $50 a month. So, but for the electricity and the gas, you don't pay it until the end of the month. So for the following month. So let's say you move in on 1st of April, and you pay 3 times the rent for the deposit and the rent, you won't pay for the utilities like gas and electricity until the end of the month, because they charge you on what you've already used. So they come and they see how much you've used, and then they charge you. But you'll be responsible for creating an account with the electricity company and the gas company, and you'll be responsible for getting your own internet. All these things were very hard. If you want, I could explain, like if you want, you can ask me in the comments for me to explain further trying to get the internet, depending on what type of apartment you get. Because the apartment that I got was not a fancy apartment in a fancy building. Like, there's no elevator or anything, and I'm on the 3rd floor. So yeah, so that is the process of getting an apartment. I can't think of anything else to include in this, you know, with regards to what else. For anybody who cannot afford to have an apartment because your credit score is not good, or you can't afford it yet because you haven't gotten a proper job, and you were just an au pair and you're trying to move to like another state, and you're trying to figure out how to move forward, because it's very hard. First of all, it's scary as hell. Second of all, you won't have a lot of friends. You can try to get friends to help you look for a room. There's always people looking for roommates. Like, let's say somebody's trying to get an apartment, they'll always say, hey, I'm looking for somebody, you can join in on that person. Or if somebody already has a room and one other person left and they want to replace that person, you can always tell your friends that are already doing this or already out there, hey, help me. You can post on Facebook to have your friends help you get a room. If you don't feel like doing any of that, you can still go on Facebook Marketplace, rooms for rent near me. You will find singular rooms that you can rent. Some of them, the rent includes all the utilities and everything, and you just give the landlord a set amount each month, regardless of whether or not you were there or whether or not you used too much electricity or too much gas. The Facebook Marketplace is where you want to be, and you can look at Facebook groups for apartments to rent in that area where you want to move. It's not always good to rely on other people for information, because people, I want to say they're not trustworthy, but everybody's got their own thing going on. Nobody's going to be focusing on getting you an apartment. Nobody's gonna be focusing on helping you. Everybody for themselves in this country, unfortunately. So if you are lucky, I was lucky enough that I had a friend who helped me look for a room as soon as I arrived. So I was able to get a place to stay for a couple of months. But if you don't have such friends, Facebook is your friend, social media is your friend. DM strangers. A lot of people DM me all the time and they ask me about apartments, they ask me all these things, and I am happy and willing to share this information. If you ask me in a public forum where there's like various people, I probably won't answer you. But if you ask me on like my DMs and stuff, I'll be happy to give you like all the information that you need. So yeah, if you can't qualify for an apartment, look for a room, ask people around. That is how you get. If somebody don't want to give you information, guys, don't take it personal. Other people, they're very paranoid with very good reason, because it's not easy out here. And I know you think, oh my God, but why would they be? There's people out there who are very, very, very evil. There's people who feel like very entitled to this country. Like if you give them the sense yokuthi uhleli lana awuna maphepha, bayakwata to a point ukuthi uzozibuza ukuthi hayibo kusekini la yini, like why? But that is the kind of people that you deal with, and I've dealt with those type of people. A lot of girls have dealt with those type of people, and that's why they become very wary of like telling others their business. But the thing is with me, I feel like this information can help people. Like I feel like all my videos where I'm sharing information is gonna be able to help you, you know. It's meant to like help you know what to do, how to navigate, you know, life after all of this. So and there's always like places where you can look for work, like care.com, Facebook, and all of that. Just be out there, guys. Just be messaging people, be like so yeah, I think this is all. If you have questions, if I've missed anything, I'll be happy to address it in the comments. If you have questions, follow-ups, all of that, I'm happy to share them with you. I'm happy to answer them for you in the comments. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. Like and obviously comment, share it with your friends. If you already subscribed, thank you so much for your support. If you are new, thank you so much for watching. Even if you're not new, thank you still for watching. You guys know. But anyways, let me know in the comments if you want to see my small cardbox apartment. Bye. 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 Bye.